Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Ever wondered what happens when a Zoomer who grew up on the Clone Wars,
a millennial Anakin defender,
and a grumpy old Gen Xer walk into a cantina to talk Star Wars?
Then we've got the podcast for you.
Star Wars Generations is a place for fans of all backgrounds to come together, talk about why we love the franchise, and what we can learn from each other.
With so much new Star Wars content coming out, we take a deep dive into all of it. We talk stories and characters, what we learn about the Force and the Empire, republics old and new, and how each story adds to the larger picture.
Besides episode-by-episode coverage of the new shows, we've been going back to watch the movies in release order. We talk about Star Wars novels and video games, along with fan content and cosplay.
And with each episode, we're just starting the conversation, and we hope you jump in. We'll read your feedback, answer your questions. We've even had full episodes dedicated to questions raised by listeners like you.
You can find us under Star Wars Generations on your favorite podcast app or by going to theethicalpanda.com. May the Force be with you.
Now this is podcasting.
Hey there, true believers. Andy Nelson here from the Marvel Movie Minute podcast with the rest of the team.
Pete Wright, Kyle Olson,
Rob Cabasco,
And Matthew Fox.
This is the podcast where we dissect the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time, exploring every detail of this epic superhero franchise.
In our season looking at Iron Man 3, we're going to mix things up a bit.
That's right, Rob and I are your guides, but instead of our usual minute-by-minute format, we dive into 5 minutes of the film in each weekly episode.
It's a totally new approach, but one that still allows us to explore all the depth and detail that makes these movies so special, even if Iron Man 3 isn't all that special.
Hold on, that's where you're wrong. Extremist, Shane Black.
Yeah, would you like to look at the Mandarin and Maya Hansen? Mm-hmm.
So whether you're a die-hard Marvel fan or just love deep dives into movies, there's something for everyone on Marvel Movie Minute.
Suit up and join us on this epic audio adventure. You can find us at truestory.fm or by searching Marvel Movie Minute on your favorite podcatcher.
Because in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, every minute is packed with excitement.
Enough said.
Hooked on you, baby, you're golden. Time moves, I never noticed. Just can't get enough. Got me wonderstruck.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Make Me a Nerd. I'm Mandy Kaplan, a mainstream mom whose mission it is to explore all things nerd culture and figure out what I've been missing out on my whole mainstream life. I am very, very excited to have a return guest today. This is going to start happening more and more. I only have a limited number of nerds in my life that I can recruit to this mission. But this, I'm going to say it right off the bat, a fan favorite. I haven't told them that yet, but a lot of good feedback from our episode on the Orville. They are the creator and host of 2 podcasts for True Story FM, Superhero Ethics and Star Wars Generations. Welcome back to Make Me a Nerd. My friend, I hope it's okay to call you
Of
that,
course,
Matthew Fox.
Well, thank you, Mandy. I am so excited to be here. I really loved our conversation about the Orville, and yes, I am very touched to hear that people enjoyed that as well. Hopefully they will feel the same about this conversation, about a content with a slightly darker theme to it, but one that I think we're going to enjoy talking about.
Quite different, quite zeitgeisty. That's why I reached out. But I would never have tried this show, The Penguin, if it weren't for my podcast. I would have said, violent, dark superheroes, no thank you. I saw the original Batman movies, like when when it was Michael Keaton and then Clooney and stuff. And then I think I saw one with Christian Bale. But after that, to me, it's dark and violent and not for me.
Mm-hmm.
But this is my mission to
I like it.
Expand my horizons. So here we are, having watched Max's, no longer HBO, right? Max's The Penguin. I don't know how to hide my feelings about this show. I loved it so deeply.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the best things I've ever watched.
Yeah.
There, I said it.
I think I have to agree with you. And it's funny because in your introduction, you said that normally you stay away from things with like darkness and violence and superheroes. I think part of what makes this show so good, and this is kind of a theme in nerddom that I'll probably expand on way too much. So tell me if I go off on a divergent. But what I'm seeing a lot in some of these shows is people saying, "Okay, well we've created this world. What if we tell the kind of story that other people are used to, not being a nerdy thing, but just put it in a nerdy world?" Because there is not a single superpower used in The Penguin.
This
This
is
is
The Godfather.
Yeah, it is 100. It's The Sopranos. It is 100%
Oh,
a
okay.
well, yeah. I don't know. I'm saying you're right. I think it's both. I think it's Godfather. I think it's
Yeah.
Sopranos. I think it is. It is a story about criminals trying to build criminal underworlds. It so happens that the criminal is a Batman villain, but like there's nothing superpowered about anything in this show. It's just a gangster story and a damn good one.
So I was so confused because I
Yeah.
assumed it was about superheroes and superpowers. And although Batman, please correct me if I'm wrong, Batman doesn't have superpowers, right? They just use gadgets and wealth and cool stuff. But
It kind of depends on your politics because his superpower is that he's very, very rich. Which,
okay.
I think some would argue is the best superpower of all.
Uh huh.
In that regard, I think he's very akin to Iron Man, Tony Stark. And and this is a debate that nerds can get into that I think is kind of silly, but the question of is a superhero someone who it has superpowers, or if they have tech that gives them the equivalent of superpowers, do they count? I think it does. But yeah, he's in the Tony Stark category. He is a completely normal human. He, his superpower is trauma and parent issues and being rich.
Okay. So that's Batman. And then none of the bad guys, they don't have superpowers either. We know the Joker looks like that because he was burned in acid. It's
Yeah.
not like that he is a supernatural being. So this is the Penguin's backstory, but they don't usually call him the Penguin. He's named Oswald Cobb.
Yep.
How much do you know about Oswald Cobb from comics, past movies? I know nothing other than Burgess Meredith and Danny DeVito.
So I will say a couple of things, and I'm kind of in a middle place where I think to a lot of the people who aren't in nerddom, I
Mhm.
know quite a lot. To comic book nerds, they're going to laugh me out of the room because I don't
Okay.
know much. I haven't read many of the comic books, but I've read about them. So a couple of quick things in background that I'll say about him. He's a character who has changed a number of times over the years. He started out as just a gangster because that was part of the point is that Batman fought gangsters. He was a
Mhm.
detective. To really understand the original Batman, you have to think about detective noir stories. Like that's what he was.
Right.
He was a gumshoe.
Okay.
And the weird thing about this penguin guy was that he wore tuxedos, penguin suits as they used to be called, and
Mhm.
he had an umbrella gun. And that's what the first thing he did was he shot his boss with an umbrella gun to take over. So um there have been 8 million variations of him over the years, but the things that have stayed is that often he has some kind of physical debility in some way. Often it's a very long nose, often it's a kind of stunted leg. In some versions, he is literally like bird-like. Danny
Okay.
DeVito in the Batman movies did a great version of this where he had like little flippers and stuff like that. In other times, he's just a penguin because he is that kind of like he'll wear a tuxedo in a very when everyone else is in like gang clothes or whatever.
No, well, first of all, I want to say if anybody comes at you because you're not an expert, they have to go through me, Matthew.
I appreciate that.
Got
I
your back.
appreciate that.
I'm ready to fight.
You
After
are.
seeing this, I'm ready. Um, but this penguin, the reason they call him that is he has a physically deformed foot that makes him waddle when he walks.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and so and I think that's often a thing. The long nose, uh he often has come from a very rich family, and so often there's kind of a story of him being kind of, cast out by that family. In this version, obviously that's not the case. In the
Mm-mm.
comic books for a long while, his name was actually Oswald Cobblepot to kind of
Okay.
give him more of that like, look
Regal.
how regal I am, etc. They cut that out, which had a lot of comic book people being like, "Oh, the show is embarrassed by its comic book roots." I think that's all nonsense. But the key elements of the character have always been that he wants to be the top criminal in Gotham, and often he is not. and he's fighting for respect. He often is someone
Always.
who
That
is
was always the Penguin, though.
always
He
the
was
Penguin.
always disrespected and, thrown aside.
And incredibly and often he has, like, very strong loyalty to the people he cares about, like, there's often a strong family connection for him, but also this idea of, like, he is very thin-skinned. You insult him, and he's often gonna like, he's that kind of, like, "Oh, look at how dignified
Hmm.
and regal I am, but if you ever, like, make fun of me, I'm gonna turn into a homicidal maniac."
I wonder if that could be a comparison to anyone in our society today.
I have no idea what you might be talking about.
Moving on.
Uh-huh.
Um, I want to give a caveat that this episode will contain spoilers. Do not listen to this episode unless you have watched the whole series, because I need to talk about every moment of it. So I'm not going to limit myself to, oh, we can't go there. Okay.
Yep.
But we are going to go lightning fast because it's 8 episodes. Is
Yep.
that right? Yep.
Each about, like, 50 minutes to an hour, so it's a good meaty series.
Yes. Now, I was misinformed. I heard Colin Farrell was in this show, but I did not spot him once. Not
He
in
play
it.
he played the Penguin.
That can't be true.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
familiar with Colin Farrell's work. That is not him.
he won a Golden Globe actually a few nights ago for playing the Penguin because it is, and I hope the prosthetics and makeup people won awards as well because they deserve it too. Yeah, it does not look like him in the slightest.
Astonishing. Vocally, physically, the voice he's doing, not just the accent, because I know he can do American and British,
Mhm.
but he is absolutely transformed, and there's not one trace of Colin Farrell except once an episode he looks sideways. You can see me, but the audience can't. I'm doing a weird Catherine O'Hara from Waiting for Guffman, like looking to the side, and you go, oh, it is Colin Farrell, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
And he is. I'm absolutely blown away. I think it's one of my top 5 favorite performances of all time. Of all
Yeah.
time.
I'm torn because the only person who I think may have been as good an actor in him, I mean, all the actors in this are amazing. The person playing Sophia is phenomenal. But the
Yes.
other person I have to give some major props to is the 11-year-old kid playing a young Oz Cobble. Oz Cobble.
Oh, isn't he good?
He's so good. And
They
part
do
of the thing is that
flashbacks, and he's imitating Colin Farrell, but also has his own twisted sensibilities and heart and evil and
is such a nuanced character. And
Mhm.
with both of them, part of what I think really gets it is they are doing an accent that I, as someone who grew up in New York City,
You did?
remember well. Yeah, I grew up in New York City. I was
Oh.
born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s and 90s. And, it was already fading then, but it's the kind of it's the accent that people mean when they talk about, like, the Brooklyn cab driver. And, like,
Yeah.
this is what I would hear from, like, my Jewish
Joyzy.
grandparents. Joyzy, yeah. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Like, I can't really do it very well, but, like, and both Oz and the person playing as young Oz get it perfectly. And it's an accent that so often sounds like a caricature, like, it sounds like they're making fun of it, and it
Mhm.
never does from them.
No.
And
Yeah.
yeah, Farrell's just amazing.
I agree. But then again, this is Gotham, not New York, right? So this
Right.
it can be even more exaggerated, even more forced, and I love it. I love this accent that he's doing so beautifully, and the kid was great. So the world they've created is the epitome of dark, literally and figuratively. It has been destroyed, and it feels post-apocalyptic. I know it's not really a post-apocalyptic show, but it's everything is dark, bleak, black. Crime is running amok on the streets, and there are these mafia families that we'll get to. But I got an Easter egg, and I never see them because I don't know anything about this world.
Uh-huh.
But the jewelry store is called Burgess Jewelry
Yeah.
for Burgess Meredith. So I was so proud of myself. I had to make a big note.
Mhm. That was awesome. And one Easter egg that I saw that was so good. At one point, Penguin and his family, such as it is, are living in an apartment complex called the Zoo, which is a
Okay.
reference to the fact that because he, in some of his more comic booky, bird-like varieties, and particularly this was in the Michael Keaton movie, he lives in the zoo because he's a penguin and he like the Michael
Gotcha.
Keaton Tim Burton movie, he like trains penguins to like
Yeah.
it's totally
Yeah,
off
yeah,
the
yeah.
wall and
Okay.
wonderful. But yeah, he lives in the zoo. So having that apartment complex be the zoo was another great one that I just loved. But Yeah, I didn't even pick up on the Burgess Meredith one, so that's awesome.
Oh, nailed it. So the first episode really sets up this world quite intensely and beautifully. I wrote, he weirdly looks like Tom Cruise in Tropic Thunder with all the prosthetics.
Mhm.
But I was on board that it's a mob story. It's not. I said, Matthew, no superhero element, but I thought maybe by episode 8 it would be in there. But
Mhm.
no, we've established it's not. It's just this dark, intense mob story. They do have some moments that I wrote are like a 9 to 5 moment of levity,
Mhm.
where there's a little ineptitude or funny moments. And I wanted more of that. I could have used a few more chances to laugh or breathe or smile because it is an intense show.
It really is.
But
Yeah.
there are some of those moments.
And I think part of that's because Penguin is often a very funny character, but I
Mhm,
think often he is a comic relief character, like,
mhm,
compared to someone like the Joker, who is
mhm.
funny, but in a much darker way, and it it's interesting how I think so much of this show is phenomenal, but it's wrestling with every like, because you could have written the story as a completely standalone story that's just about mob families fighting it
That's
out.
how I saw it because I don't
Right.
know anything.
And I think that they mostly did a great job of that, but I do think there were times where they're wrestling with the weight of everything that had gone before. My sense was that they didn't want this Penguin to be too funny because that has sort of sidelined him in the past, which I
Uh-huh.
think is unfortunate because you're right. I think Colin Farrell was at times hilariously funny, and
Yes.
as was Sophia in ways that were sort of like Sophia, who's the main femme fatale. I'm actually going to say that Sophia, who's kind of like the main woman in this, and Cobblepot's biggest rival. He's Cobb, but I call him Cobblepot Penguin. She would say things that were hilariously funny while also being incredibly sinister, and
Oh,
I just
yes.
love that.
Now, let's talk about her for a minute. He's reunited with her in the pilot. She is Sofia Falcone. He
Mhm.
used to be her driver. Then she hints at what you did to me I could never forgive, and we know she went away to Arkham Penitentiary for years, but we don't really know
Yep.
why in the pilot. She is played by Cristin Milioti, a Broadway baby. Cristin Milioti is not a household name. And I was envisioning all the A-list actresses they probably passed over because this woman deserved this role.
Mhm.
She is pitch perfect as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I can't imagine someone nailing this part better because she is y we've seen a lot more in recent years about the Falcone family. She's the daughter of Carmine Falcone. For those who've seen the Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, that this is kind of a sequel to, or at least is set in the time after.
Oh,
Um, oh, yeah, so this comes directly after that movie, and in that movie, her father is killed, and that's kind of what set all of this up. Because a lot of the show is about the power vacuum that's formed.
mhm,
Yeah, just as the person who is particularly with flashbacks, yeah, like you said, there's no spoilers we're worrying about.
right,
Everything she does about this fascinating arc of a person who was not crazy,
right.
who was trying her best to not be like her family.
Born into a world of violence and deception and cruelty, but she was a bright spot. She was going to rise above it.
Yeah, and in part because of that, in part because she starts to discover the terrible things her father did and might expose him, they get her locked up in Arkham Insane Asylum.
Mhm.
Which I say that as someone who's a very big defender of mental health, and like I think often mental health facilities are portrayed quite badly. That's not Arkham. Arkham is supposed to be an old style
Right.
insane asylum run by corrupt people, etc. Uh,
Yes.
and it turns her into what everyone was claiming she was before,
A
a
brutal killer.
yeah, brutal killer with all these awful plans and just off.
Yet, Sophia and Oswald both have heart. You are rooting for them both, weirdly, even
Yeah.
though they are both vicious killers.
Did you find so about halfway through the show they team up for a little while,
Yes.
and then there's a scene where it seems like Penguin breaks that team up, but more out of circumstance than actual need, although his secrets with her are being revealed. Did you find a part of you was kind of rooting for them to get back together? Or
Yes, throughout.
yeah.
Because the way they start, once they get to the flashbacks and he was her driver, he was protective of her and she appreciated him.
Mhm.
And they had a really nice rapport. and then shit went bad and he really betrayed her and he was the reason she went to Arkham or one of them. And I was bummed. I
Yeah.
liked these two people who seemingly were trapped in this world being a team. And it was fun to see them together. Their first scene together, extended scene, is a multi-martini lunch in the pilot.
Mm.
And they're sitting there and they're not saying exactly what they're feeling. They're pretending they don't want to kill each other. And it's so tense you can't breathe between these two characters. And as I was watching every episode, that's a hallmark of the show. Two people sitting and talking, not saying what they're really feeling. And the tension is so high. And I think it's done so well. And just a random praise for the show. A lot of those scenes are between two women.
Yes. Yes.
And this is a gangster's male world. But Cristin Milioti gets scenes like that with Oz's mom, with Oz's girlfriend. It's exciting to watch two women capable of violence and mayhem negotiate rather than two men, which is what we've always seen.
No, I think that is so true. And just, this is a different direction, but I think kind of speaks to a similar idea. One of the reasons why I loved the Sofia Oz dynamic so much is that there are two main characters. There's a strong will they, won't they of will they team up or not.
Mm-hmm.
And she is an incredibly sexy woman and portrays her in a very kind of like, oh my God, she's going to kill me, but I might like it kind of a way. But not without it becoming the kind of cartoonishly like domination. Like she doesn't have a whip or anything like that. She's just terrifying and hot. And Penguin is not that. I mean, he certainly has a magnetism to him, but there is never a hint for a moment, at least not that I saw, that the question of will they team up again is will they kiss? You know, like
no.
Take that off. And romance is fun. I like romance. I like watching pretty people kiss on screen. But I find it kind of demeaning that like anytime a woman has a strong partnership with a man, that part of the theme is, are they going to hook up? And I just love that they took that off the table entirely.
Yeah. There was no real romance on the show, which is nice. There is Oz has a girlfriend, who we'll get to, but yeah, there's no sexy stuff. It is just too desolate and vicious for that.
Yeah. There's one little there's an actor named Theo Ross who might maybe people may recognize from Sons of Anarchy or from Luke Cage, who
he was just in Carry On Netflix. So
okay, awesome. Well, I don't know if this is in Carry On, but in all the things I've listed, he has become the person who is the younger, competent man who's utterly obsessed with and sleeping with an older woman who could probably kill him, but he might like it. And so we get a little of that with him and Sofia. But yeah, again, it's not played
very little. Yeah.
It's the kind of like she's using him in 8 different ways, one of which is for his body, but it's not play. There's no like seduction scene. There's no,
right.
It's just, there's
nothing sexy. It's transactional if that.
Yeah.
And he plays Dr. Julian Rush, who we meet in the pilot, or in episode 2, we meet him because he is her therapist at Arkham. And the minute I saw him, I said, oh, well, he's not getting out of the show alive. But I was wrong, right? I mean, he goes through the whole show. But then I also have a note at the very end. Did he get shot and I missed it? Or is he floating out there and might recur in a season 2?
I don't think he got shot.
As
we've seen, being wounded in the show, like your wounds heal at the speed of plot. Which is very comic booky.
Yes.
But yeah, I think they're going to keep him around because Arkham is the idea that Arkham is both incredibly corrupt and has the worst set of locks on the doors that you've ever seen.
Right.
Is very much a running gag throughout all of Batman comics.
And I'm just remembering he is there at the very, very end. He comes into her cell and says, it's me, it's Julian. So, okay. I just remembered. Sorry. Brain fart.
One thing, a connection I just made that I'm wondering if I might be reaching for this, but I think this is intentional. The dynamic they set up of that Sofia is his patient, but that she both like gets him on her side, and also kind of helps push him into his own like villain era. is I think intentionally a mirror to the Joker Harley story.
Oh,
Because Harley Quinn starts out as Dr. Harlequin Quinzel, who is the
okay.
therapist to Joker in Arkham.
Therapist to Joker in Arkham. Oh,
So
so the Joker was in Arkham too?
yeah, the
Okay.
Joker, not in this version of the story yet, but
Right.
and the idea is that like Harley eventually becomes sympathetic to him and it kind of takes up his mantle and then helps him escape and then becomes wanting to help him, which is exactly what this doctor does.
Gotcha.
So I don't know if that's intentional, but it feels like it's close enough. That's got to be an intentional thing.
Sure. Um, I mean, talk about a violation of it's not HIPAA, but whatever it would be. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so gross. He's so gross. Okay. Um, the character of Dr. Julian Rush, not the
Mhm.
actor Theo Rossi. Uh, this world that they're in now, she gets out. I'm in episode 2-ish. We are getting a more glimpses of this world, and the drug that everyone is addicted to is an eye drop. And I find that so inventive and so fascinating. That's the party drug of choice in this world.
I spent a lot of time around a lot of people who did a lot of drugs. I was the person who was there to like, hold their hair back because I would stay
Uh-huh.
sober. But yeah, like I've kind of gotten bored of drug stories because it's like, okay, it's a powder that you snort, it's a pill that you take, or it's a needle you put in your arm. And we've
Right.
seen that so many times. And
Right.
with both of the drugs that they deal with, both the drops and then later bliss, they
Mhm.
come up with something new and interesting, which
Right.
I really liked.
Yes. So that's why I wanted to mention it, because bliss becomes such a focal point of the middle of the series. But
Mhm.
everyone is addicted to this eye drop drug. And we should give a huge mention to the character of Victor Aguilar, who
Yep.
uh, Oz catches a bunch of kids trying to steal his car, and he kills them all, but spares this kid, Victor Aguilar, played by Renzi Feliz, played beautifully and perfectly by
Mhm.
Renzi Feliz. I don't know this young actor, but man, do you want to hold him in your arms and take care of him for the rest of his life?
Yeah.
Because he's
I hope
so.
we're going to get to know him because he's a phenomenal actor who deserves a lot of new parts.
I believe this will get it done. He is so good. This character, Victor, has a stutter, and I have a stutterer in my family. And one of the things that Oz does that makes you love Oz. Oz kills anybody who crosses him. Oz betrays everybody. He lies to everybody. But when somebody's trying to fill in a sentence for Victor, Oz jumps in and says, "Don't do that to him. Let him talk for himself." And he takes up protecting this young boy.
Yeah.
He treats him like a son at times.
And,
At
and he
times.
and he's very gruff and he's very cruel at times. But yeah, there's so much love in that moment, particularly because he not only says that to the waiter and he says, no, like let him take his time. But then he says to Victor, like, no, you should do that. Take up space.
Mhm.
That message is one that I think a lot of disabled people, I know certainly I think, and you can speak this far better than I, but that women aren't told, that people who aren't, white, straight, cis men who are able-bodied are told, like, make yourself smaller, and his
Yep.
statement of take up space, which is mirrored, by the way, by Sophia, I think very much having a story of being told not to and taking up her space at the end of the story as well, much to Oz's not happiness, but it's still that same message.
Right.
Yeah, it reveals such an interesting part of Oz's character, I think, that he's so quick to yell at people, he's so quick to get angry, but also he still cares in that weird way.
I know. That's why you can keep watching. That's why you are rooting for him despite his evil heart. It's a
There's one other
really fascinating character study, I think.
there's one other moment that I thought just like perfectly captured that aspect of Oz. It's in I think the 7th episode, and he's just dealt with some person who is like, he's just dealt with a city councilor who he is blackmailing. He clearly hates this person. He has no respect for him. He's threatened to like destroy his political life, to like kill him. He's like almost ripped off the guy's nose. And then he's like, yeah, get out of here. Yeah, terrible person, like drive away. And then as the guy is like cautiously like pulling out of a parking space, he starts doing the like Midwestern dad of like, no, you got enough space, you're okay. Like helping the guy pull out of the space. And I was just like, Oz, what are you doing? Like, why are
I
you there if he
know.
clips his bumper? But that's just who he is. Oz is like, and excuse me a second. I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but I've
Yeah.
often defended New Yorkers as a New Yorker because people are like, oh my God, New Yorkers are such terrible people. Like, no, I think we can be very kind hearted. We're just not very nice. And
Mm.
so I often describe that a perfect way to understand a New Yorker is if you're walking down the street with too many bags and you drop one, New Yorkers will rush over to help you
Hmm.
and will be very friendly as they help you. And then they'll walk away saying, goddamn tourists carrying too many bags. What the hell is wrong with that person? But they
Right.
still have gone over to help you, you know?
Right.
And
Right.
that moment for Oz just feels so much like that.
Yeah. He's layered and fascinating.
Mhm.
Like, oh, here I go. I'm getting deep. Heads up. Like an animal at the zoo that you could just sit and watch for hours and try to figure them out and their patterns. And there's maybe no pattern, and sometimes there is. And that's how this version of Oz Cobb is. And
Right.
I love it. Um, so I'm while I'm still on episode 2, uh, tiny observation. He slugs Pepto-Bismol out of the bottle, and that is such a movie trope to me.
Mhm.
Just I had to ding this perfect show for something like that. I don't know. These characters that walk around slugging Pepto-Bismol
Yep. It's
irks
just
me.
such a way to say, like, they have lots of stress, they have stomach ulcers, this is who they are.
Yeah. But then in the 3rd episode, we go back in time to see how Victor ended up on his own. His family dies in the flood, right?
Mhm.
And that the way they did this flood took my breath away. It was so scary and real and well CGI'd, and I am in awe of the effects on the show.
Well, and this is one thing I loved because for context, have you seen the Batman movie that this is sort of a follow-up to?
No.
Okay, so forgive me for spoilers in that, but the flood that they're talking about is a major plot point in that movie.
Okay.
And they're doing something here that I really love that has kind of been a new trend in superhero stories, but hasn't really happened much, which is where often, like, the evil plan of the bad guy will cause mass destruction, but all we see is like the superhero sadly observing the mass destruction and maybe like one or two, like, adorable, kids being in the threat of danger so our hero can rescue them, that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But we don't often see like what's happening to normal people
Right.
while these two like super powered people, or in Batman's case, not that, but still like, super evil, and and rich hero are trying to fight them.
Hmm.
And so to show us that same scene from that movie, but now show us just no, what was it just like for normal people and how, yeah, right, it's out of a horror movie. Makes
Oh, okay. So the flood we saw, I'm assuming not the same footage, but we
Right.
saw that flood. Okay, got it.
Right. And that the even starting out is before we even see the flood, we see just like explosions everywhere.
Hmm.
And in a Batman movie, you're used to seeing explosions. But what we see is these two kids on a roof watching these explosions that
Yes.
we know are the bomb. If we've seen the movie, we know are the bombs blowing up the dams, and that's why the flood happens.
Okay.
But it just looks like a horror movie. And it
Yes.
was just, I felt just how terrified these characters would be, especially as they literally watch their parents get washed away.
Yes. Oh, it was really emotional and visceral and fantastic. Um,
And if I can say one other thing about that scene,
I'll allow it.
thank you. And this is not the scene, but just the whole plot line with him, because he's up there with a girl who he's clearly likes,
Yes.
and she likes him back, and they're like, boyfriend, girlfriend, like date. There's some level of connection where they're already kissing each other.
Mhm.
And it's such a small thing, but that was such a trope break because so often in a story like this, when you've got a character like Victor who is in some way like seen as less than by others, because in his case, because of his stutter, it's a disability, it's that they're very shy. Part of the point is that, of course, they're not like brave enough to talk to girls or to whatever gender
Mhm.
they're interested in, and that by the end of the story, our main character will have helped give them the confidence to go up and ask out the girl.
Interesting.
And the fact that the version of him in this story, before he gets the confidence that Penguin gives him, while he has a stutter, while he's shy and retiring, is still, able to be very interesting and attractive to this also very attractive girl. I loved that so much because it was just being like, just as he is still, to someone that age, like a very attractive kid someone who would want to smooch on. And
right.
I just love that so much.
Well, and the confidence he gains through Oz is darker. He gains the confidence to kill and to discard human life. I mean, that's even darker than now I can talk to the girl I like. Thanks.
Yeah.
So we're in Victor's world for a lot of this episode, but then we're also in Sofia's world towards the end. And this is Michael Kelly, who I know from House of Cards.
Yep, me too.
But, okay. He plays a character named Johnny Vitti, who is like the number 2 to Sofia's dad, right? Or to Sofia's uncle.
Right.
Who's the head of the Falcone family. And Johnny Vitti calls him the Penguin. And I think that might be the first time.
I think so, yeah.
And it's jarring because you're seeing this guy who, as evil as he is, he's down on his luck. He can't help his limp and his waddle from his deformed foot. And Johnny Vitti slings that insult at him. And it's just like, oh. And then this episode ends with, I wrote, moments after he has a powerful mea culpa to Sofia. She says, I don't know how I can trust you. He says, how about I keep showing you? Then he just leaves her for dead. It is twisted.
It's so, and of course, in the next episode, as we'll talk about in a second, is where we start to get her backstory.
Yes.
The way they time everything of like, that is always just as you're feeling, I want to, why did this character do that? That's when they give you the backstory. That's when they give you some of the answers. The pacing of it was just so perfectly done.
I agree. I wrote 3 times in those first 3 episodes. Wait, what the hell did he do to her? Why and I thought I was going to need to ask you and you were going to say, oh, well, in the comic books or in the movie. But no, that's the show making us want this information and then giving it to us at the perfect time, like you just said.
Right.
So her dad is played by the very adorable and harmless Mark Strong. Who, I mean, how much have you seen Mark Strong?
I've seen him in a bunch of things, yeah.
If I saw him at a restaurant, I would leave the restaurant. He's so scary. He's such a good baddie. That's all he does, right? Have you ever seen him play a non-bad guy?
No, and I'm so glad to hear that because I couldn't enjoy his performance because that same character in the movie is played by John Turturro.
Oh, interesting.
And in such a good role that it's hard to, like, I couldn't focus on, look at how good this guy is. I just kept looking at him and being like, but you're not John Turturro. And John Turturro was so good in that movie. So I'm really glad to hear that without that background, this role was just as good.
I mean, I don't know anything about the movie or Turturro's performance of it, but Mark Strong is Mark Strong. He does what he does, and he is terrifying. So we see how she ends up in Arkham. And I wrote, the sequence of her entering is chilling because Sofia Falcone, up to that point, is a gal just like me, a young woman who was making her way in the world. She had not committed crimes. She thought she loved her family. And watching her go through that process is chilling. I read the book Orange is the New Black before it became a series. And it still haunts me because of the premise that the police can knock on your door one day and say, that thing you did 10 years ago that you thought was no big deal, it's a big deal. Come with us. And that was the purpose of her book. I can't remember her name, Piper something. But the purpose was, this could really happen to anybody. I was a normal gal working and living in an apartment, and they came and found me and threw me in jail. So watching Cristin Milioti go through that was so scary.
It really was, and we try not to make this too much of my own personal life, but like I've had a lot of experience of mental health professionals, and I have like I'm very much a person who's not like I think therapy is great. I think sometimes mental health institutions can be exactly what a person needs. I was in
Yes.
one for a couple days, and it was saved my life.
Great.
But I also know that within a lot of the system, especially when it's not working well, eh, once the medical like people, I sound really paranoid as I say that, but once folks in that world, or even just your family members, mark you as this person is not mentally stable, it becomes possible to ignore everything you say and just write it up as, oh, this is because they're crazy, because you're starting. And this show calls that out so well.
Yes.
Because part of what happens is they frame her and basically make it seem like she is completely out of her mind, so that all of her, and then, every question is some version of, when did you stop hitting your wife?
Mhm.
That kind of old trope, so that when she says, but I never did, everyone goes, oh, so look how in denial she is.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
just part of what I think is so horrifying and so real is that what does drive her into kind of sociopathy, or, whatever it is, I'm not trying to diagnose her, but more in the kind of pop culture use of those kind of terms, like whatever it is that drives her to be a person who just brutally murder people by the dozen,
Yeah.
including a lot of her own family. It's that you see her starting to lose it because of her realization that no matter what she does,
Right.
once the system has stamped her as you are not mentally well, she can never change that, because everything will be seen with that assumption.
Yes. And a place like this can make you crazy.
Yeah.
So she has a neighbor named Magpie, and I wrote, I might have killed Magpie too.
Mhm.
This highly, highly annoying, crazy person, taunting her and in her face and trying to be her best friend. And uh, it's a place like this can actually make you crazy.
And what I loved about that scene is that she's holding back, she's holding back, she's holding back, and then she's pushed past her limit and she snaps into a homicidal rage.
Mhm.
Who does that sound like? Like in that moment, she was exactly like Penguin in a way that I just thought
Mhm.
was so interesting.
And probably her dad too, you know?
Yeah.
Here's where I just fell for Cristin Milioti,
Mhm.
because she seemed 10 years younger in this episode.
Yeah.
Her demeanor, her look, her eyes, her voice, everything was younger. And there were no prosthetics. There was no difference in her look. She just is a fine actress who
Yeah.
seemed 10 years younger and more innocent. And then she comes out hardened, having aged, 40 years in her 10
Right.
years at Arkham. Um, oof, this is a great performance. She didn't win a Golden Globe though, did she?
I don't think so, but I think she's I try not to pay too much attention to the award talk, but I'll see it every now and then. And I think she's being talked about a lot as getting an Emmy nomination, because I think she deserves
Okay.
it. I think
She got the nomination for the Golden Globe. I know that. I just didn't see
okay.
who won. Anyway, uh so her physicality changes in this episode. She comes home. Now we're back to present day. We see what she's been through, and she, spoiler, kills her whole family
Right.
brutally.
With
Her
the exception of the
physicality,
young girl in her family, her
she
niece.
right.
Yeah.
She changes how she walks, how she holds herself. She is now free of this family. Everything about Sofia Falcone is different. And I credit Cristin Milioti with
Mhm.
bringing all of that subtlety and physicality. There was no dialogue. She just changed. She just was reborn in that moment.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was all so well done. And her gentle, kind nature with her niece, who she wanted to spare.
Mhm. Because I think we saw her at that age, like that she is that age. There's a whole backstory of her mother committed suicide, as she was told, and she discovered her at that age, and
Hmm.
that's a lot of what kind of started her down a lot of these dark roads. But obviously, it was that when her family framed her that drove her off the edge. And I think it's very intentional that girl is exactly Sophia's age.
Hmm.
She's and it's that same. I think Sophia sees in her the little girl who she wants to protect, but in so doing winds up doing the exact same thing of, because Sophia as a young girl was lied to and told your mother committed suicide, when I think it's pretty clear that her father killed her mother.
Right.
And here Sophia is saying, oh, no, it's a terrible accident, when Sophia is the one who killed this young girl's family.
And then I thought she was going to keep Gia and raise her, but she actually sends her away into the system.
Right.
And when she goes to visit her later, yes, it's self-serving. She's trying to tell her, like, don't tell anybody what I did. But she's also trying to spare Gia of this life. That's why she doesn't keep her.
Yeah.
Because she knows so Gia won't have a future. So letting her go is her way of saving her.
Right. It's the attempt to break the cycle. Because
Yes.
this is part of when she's realizing that she's been fighting so hard against becoming her father that she literally has become her father.
Completely and totally. So that was episode 4, Sophia's backstory. She murders the whole family. Now we're back in present day. Episode 5, Vic is now violent. Victor. He's
Mhm.
now got a taste for it. He's got his confidence. And I wrote, I don't like that he's violent now.
Yeah.
He was so sweet and a voice of reason. And everything he was doing was he was forced to commit these acts of criminal violence because it was to save his own life. And now he was taking some joy in it.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's this story is fundamentally about corruption, in a
Mhm.
real way. And that they talk about that a lot because they talk about how the mayor is trying to clean up the corruption in Gotham. But I feel like this story is really a story about the corruption of Gotham. Which I'm going to say more about as we get to the end, because I have one quibble with that. But I think the character of Victor is a great way to show that, especially because, and I don't know if this is the director or the actor, but he stutters less and less as he gets
Yes.
more confident.
Right.
To the point where he at one point will give a very impassioned speech, basically trying to like mobilize a criminal army to
Mhm.
go and help his friend, and it works. And he doesn't stutter once during that speech.
I know. Chills.
It was so good. It was so good.
Yep. I wrote, is this what The Godfather's like? Maybe I should see that. Can you believe I have not seen The Godfather? I'm a 50-year-old woman. What is wrong with me?
It is very, very good. And I can't imagine how it fits under Make Me a Nerd, but if there's any way I can talk to you about it, I would happily do so.
Thank you. In episode 5, I got a little fed up with Oz always getting out of trouble, always winning in whichever little battle he was in. When he says, wait, don't shoot, nobody shoots him.
Yeah.
And that's another tropey thing I roll my eyes a bit. Why is it that he kills people left and right, but when he says, wait, listen, no, then they don't cut his throat?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's definitely a bit of a trope. It's definitely like that is a trope of the character, is that his superpower really is his ability to talk his way out of anything. But I think that it was a bit overused in this, in ways that were, and like, but he feels to me, and this feels very accurate to a lot of the more modern versions of the character, especially Robin Wright. I think it's Robin Lee Wright. He's got a middle name, I forget it, but in a very different portrayal in the TV show Gotham, but a brilliant one. And in that one and in this one, there's often a sense of like he wins all the time, but every victory is Pyrrhic. Like he wins, and then 2 other things that he thought were secure fall apart. And so he goes and he wins those back, but then 2 other things fall apart. And there's just constant like he's always getting his finger in the dike when he needs to, but then 2 other holes pop up.
Okay, so is that what Pyrrhic means?
Oh no, yeah, Pyrrhic victory just means like you win the battle but lose the war, kind of thing. Like
I see.
You win a particular fight, but you lose so much doing it that it's not actually worth it.
You're making me a nerd in so many ways.
That's a Greek history nerd. So ancient Greece. So there you go.
Oh, all right. I would have called it vocabulary nerd, but in episode 5, here's my story. I screamed out, spoiler coming, when she shot Johnny Vitti, which I love. You take a well-known actor in a smaller role, and I think he's going to rise up and become one of the stars of the show. And no, they just took him out. I love when shows do that. I yelled, "Oh my God!" And my husband, Jer, came running down the hall. He's like, "Are you okay? What happened? What happened?" That's how invested I was. I couldn't believe it. I was.
I had to put my hand over my mouth because I also
Yes.
I'm much more of a night owl than my spouse is, and also she's newly pregnant, so she is sleeping all the time. I need to slip that in somewhere, but yeah, so she's
Congratulations.
thank you, thank you. July 23rd, a new Padawan learner will enter our family, but um yeah, so she's sleeping a lot, and I really don't want to disturb her, and so I'll often watch this stuff later at night, and yeah, I had to clamp my hands over my mouth when that happened.
Yes. Yes. I,
And
oh,
I
love
I
it.
think I think you're right that the penguin talking his way out of trouble trope is overused, but I don't think it's coincidence that those two things are in the same time because what is Vidi is trying to talk his way out of trouble.
Hmm.
And I think we're supposed to think she's the one who won't let Penguin get away with it because he starts to do a penguin act of talking his way out of things, and she's just like, "No, I'm just gonna shoot him." She doesn't tell him to
Yep.
shut up. She's just
Right.
like, "No, we're just not doing this."
Heartless. Now comes the point of the episode where I want to talk about hairstyles.
Let's do it.
Is there a reason why Sofia Falcone has that Joan Jett weird haircut?
Yeah, I don't know. I had a question for you actually about her makeup, but let's go with your thing about the hairstyle because I'll say at the beginning I don't know what the details there are about the Joan Jett haircut.
It's so specific. If everybody or Pete, I think Pete can put a picture up
Mhm.
of her. It's like jaggedy and black in the front, and then a little long and shaggy and rock star in the back. And I thought maybe it was uh some holdover from, oh, she had to keep it shorn at Arkham, and I don't know, but it's a fascinating haircut. Not very attractive.
Everything about her style kind of felt to me like she was someone who was trying to do a look that she didn't like. Here's the makeup question I was going to ask you. Around that time, there's a couple episodes where she has like dark eyeliner for a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
show, but
Mm-hmm.
she has like a dark line under her eyes.
Mhm.
I've been trying to do more makeup on myself. I'm still very new to it,
Mhm.
but that felt like that didn't feel like that was where it should have been. Like I feel like I was looking at her line and hearing like my partner who helps me with it being like, no, it's got to be on your eye line, it's got to be on your tear line or whatever it is.
Mm.
Did you notice her eye makeup seeming off in some way?
No, not that
Okay,
I noticed. Exaggerated.
yeah,
She's always wearing things that are a little too over the top for the situation, and
yeah.
but I see all of that as her just taking back her freedom and expressing herself and doing whatever the fuck she wants.
Yeah. So I guess I would say that, yeah, the hairstyle to me fits in very much with that as well.
Yeah, I guess. I didn't notice the makeup though. One character we have not talked about who starts to factor in episode 6 big time is Ava, and that's Oz's girlfriend,
Mhm.
played girlfriend slash prostitute slash partner in the bliss drug business that Oz and Sophia launch, and they use Victor and Carmen. Ava brings all her girls in
Uh-huh.
to sell in the clubs. They want to have the new party drug for all of Gotham. And the actress, Carmen Ejogo or
Mhm.
Ejogo, I'm not sure. Do you know she's not American?
I did not know that. She definitely like I can tell she's not white and
She is
uh
Nigerian and Scottish.
interesting. Yeah, okay.
And doing that accent and pulling it off
Mhm.
so gloriously.
Yeah.
I loved this actress.
And we get so little of her, but still what we get hits so hard. And
Hmm.
I just want to say that this is a way in which it really echoes a theme of the movie because in the movie, and here I don't want to spoil things too much, but the way that sex workers and women in these clubs are treated as highly disposable is a big plot point, and the fact that for these girls, I use that term like they're grown women, but they refer to themselves often as that, and they're
Yes.
often referred to as that. That they have a very strong solidarity because they're the only ones who can look out for each other.
Right.
And so the fact that her character is very much motivated by that, and the only reason she turns on Oz is when she realizes that, like, Oz has been kind of covering for someone who murdered some of her, fellow workers who she was very close with.
Right.
Um, uh, it's just a perfect carryover from the movie in a way that I really appreciated.
Okay, good. I was about to praise the creator of the series, but I don't have the name. Lauren LaFranc. This series was created by a woman, which I also love because it
Awesome.
feels quite masculine and quite familiar to that
Uh-huh.
tone. And yet here she is. Did you know, fun fact, Jonah Hill was the first person offered this role, according to Reddit, according to my inside sources on Reddit.
Huh. Okay.
What a different show.
Yeah. I'm like, I have seen him be a decent actor, but
Yeah.
still, that would have been such a. Yeah. No, I'm very glad we did not go that route.
I couldn't believe it. They're just so different. Their energies and I don't know that I could be terrified of Jonah Hill. Maybe.
Yeah.
And in this prosthetic, I think anybody would come to the role and bring it to life. But I just was blown away by that.
Uh-huh.
So the end of 6, Ava, Oz's girlfriend, gives him up. He's in hiding, and
Yep.
Sophia is after him, and she goes to Ava's, we think to kill Ava, and she spares her, which is another complex aspect of Sophia's character, because she
Yep.
does feel bad that her dad killed all of Ava's friends. And it's a fantastic scene between two women negotiating life and death, and it's riveting. And we're in Ava's apartment, which is a real glimpse into her real life, not her streetwalker life, not her glamorous life with Oz, but just who she is when the wig is off.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
And that's commented. Like, Sophia asks her, like, because she doesn't have the makeup. She's not dressed up all glamorously. And Sophia asks her, like, does Oz ever see you like this? And she says, yeah, he doesn't like it. And I just thought that was such an interesting moment of Sophia is getting to see a side of her, of Ava, that Oz doesn't get to see,
Right.
and there's an intimacy there that is really powerful.
And you just struck a chord because Oz's mission in life is to give his mother, whom we haven't talked about, which is Shondas, but he wants to give his mother a glamorous life. His mother is his world. He's in love with his mother, I think. And Frances Cobb is now in her 70s and has some dementia, but played by Deirdre O'Connell, who is off the charts perfect in this role. But when we flash back to who she was as a young woman, and we see that Oz, everything he did was to be with his mom and for his mom and love his mom. He actually killed his brothers.
Yep.
Hello. Twisted. And it leaves them as two lost souls, and they're the only thing that each other has. She wants to kill Oz for what he did, but she spares his life, and he devotes his whole life to giving her a glamorous life, which is interesting that then Ava says he doesn't like me without my makeup and my wig and my glam.
Yeah.
Because he wants this glamorous dream of his mother.
Early in the show, one of the ways I think that you first feel so much sympathy for Oz is he has a moment where he's like, maybe I need to get out. Maybe I just need to run. And his mom is like, no, you need to become the criminal overlord. You need to go do this. You promised you'd take care of me. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is every overbearing mother. Like, this is the worst stage mom you've ever seen times a million.
Yeah.
And, which, small aside here, but I just want to get into, one of the things that is often done with Oz is that he's often been portrayed as Jewish. And in some ways that's been good, but in some ways it's been kind of problematic, especially with the whole like long nose thing and him being like the child of rich parents and all, and him being the one who is the most like financial conspiracy type things. And they intentionally, I think, made him much more Italian than Jewish in this. And honestly, I got to say, especially after seeing the scenes with his mom, I was happy for that, because I feel like there is such a stereotype about Jewish mothers and sons, that like that scene would have felt like a bad cliche if it was that. But but instead of it not being, but still very like, New York, Brooklyn, which has that, but Italian and Irish and all that stuff.
Mhm.
It just played perfectly because so at first you're like, oh my God, Oz, he has this terrible mother. And then as it comes out, you realize his mother was never the best, but she was doing her best. And
Mhm.
she is like this because this was the way she could rationalize not, she continued raising her son because her son promised that he would do all these things for her. And
Right.
she was like, that's the only way I can ever forgive this horrible thing you've done to your brothers. Which,
Yes.
let's just talk about that. How did you react to that whole plot line of when we see how he killed his brothers?
I mean, it's part of this twisted thing that I love on this
Uh-huh.
show. It's all jaw-dropping, but it could happen, and I I I was I was so down for how dark this got,
Yeah.
and the exploration of evil in the hearts of men. I was down. I loved it. I thought it explored it in such a powerful way. So,
Yeah, I
I
think
mean, my
that is
criticisms are like Pepto-Bismol and,
yeah.
I have minor, minor, minor negatives. I thought this was a damn near perfect 8 episodes of television.
And it's funny, yeah, because my only real criticism that I'll get to in a few minutes is just about how well it ties or doesn't tie into the Batman movie that preceded it, which for you
Mhm.
doesn't matter because it's just a standalone show, which is even
Right.
better. But I think that's the best episode in the show, although it's a very tight race. Partially because, and for people listening to this later, they forgot or whatever, like, he's playing this version, he's playing flashlight tag with his brothers, and his brothers go and hide in a place that's down a steep ladder that it's hard for him to crawl and
Mhm.
for him to come down. And he's like, I caught you, I win. And they're like, no, 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 you've got to actually hit us with a flashlight. You have to come down. And he starts to, and it's really hard with his leg. And he's like, and you, how can you do that? That's not fair.
Mhm.
And he says, like, guys, I can't climb down a ladder like that. Why are you doing this to me? And in that moment, I was so on his side
Mhm.
because, yeah, like and I was never a disabled kid. I became disabled as an adult. But like, yeah, when there are moments where my friends kind of like forget that, like, oh yeah, you invited me to this restaurant that's up 2 flights of stairs.
Right.
I like that sucks.
Yeah.
And so what I thought they were giving us was this that he without having to he is just like, fine, well, I'm just gonna like close the door on you to show you that I'm mad
To
at you.
teach you a little lesson.
Yeah,
That
and
would
then
be a normal childhood thing to do.
right. And I've seen in a bunch of movies, one kid has a flash of anger at another kid and does something that like later kills the kid, but the first kid had no idea it was going to do that. He didn't mean to kill them, and it's horribly traumatizing.
Yep.
And that's what I thought they were giving us. And
Mm-mm.
then we get to the scene where the rain is coming down and the mother is worried. And I'm like, okay, so here's where Oz says, oh no, I know where they are. Let's go find them. And they come up dead. And Oz doesn't go look. And I was like, okay, Oz, now's when you tell Oz, Oz, what? And it just
Matthew, he curls up on his mother and watches a movie and eats popcorn, and he's happy because he's got her all to himself now. It's
it was so chilling.
diabolical. Oh,
And did you catch what the movie was?
I forget.
It was Fred Astaire as a gangster dancing as a penguin.
Oh, yes.
Like
Oh.
it was just so perfect. It was like every moment of that, and that's when I was like, give this little kid an Oscar or an Emmy or whatever the hell, like because
He was really good. Yeah.
and you can see on his face the moment where he realizes like they may not actually get out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with that, and that's when you're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this is so much more evil than I thought it was. This is
Yes.
dark.
So we are coming to an end here, but
Mhm.
I want to ask, did you cry at the ending of the series?
Yes.
Me too. Me too. You
I
are the
cried
only guest that I cry with.
I I cried a number of times. I assume you're talking about where Oz kills Victor,
Yes.
which
Oh
it,
God.
at first it made me angry because I love that character so much, and I didn't want to see him not be there.
Mm-hmm.
But what I realized is there's a lot of shows that have kept characters around long past the time when they should have died or they should have moved on because the audience likes them.
Mm-hmm.
And like there may not be a season 2. This may just be a standalone story, and next we're gonna get Penguin as a character in the next Batman movie. I have no idea. But the fact that they were willing to kill him off because it is exactly what Penguin would do,
Right.
it was really hard hitting, but I thought it was absolutely
Yes.
proper
Me
and
too.
correct, and I
Yes.
loved it.
Yeah. And I think there is another season, or at least they intended for it, because she's in Arkham and she hears from her cousin Selena Kyle, who I know to be Catwoman.
Yep.
Right. And then there's a Batman signal. So I think there will be a season 2.
Not cousin, half sister.
Half sister. That's what I said. Don't correct me on my podcast.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, just to fill it in, because Selena Kyle is the child of Falcone and one of those sex workers who he abused.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Whew.
So
All right.
those two teaming up is going to be something. And she's played by Zoe Kravitz, who's phenomenal.
But maybe not in the series.
Maybe not. We'll see.
I know. And I mean, I'm down with Zoe Kravitz, but it'll just be interesting because they're doing their own thing here.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to just recommend this show to everyone, big and small.
Yeah.
Although my son wants to try it, and I think it's just too violent. But he can try it. And if he is disturbed, he won't watch it. But as a masterclass in acting, everyone should see this show.
Can I just throw out 2 last things very quickly?
By all means, of course.
So the first is, and it's another one of these like blink and you'll miss it moments, but that just it fills in the world so well. A lot of these shows that are about the mob and about Italians act as though there's no one but Italians in their world. And that's not quite accurate. And I like that they mix this up here. And this is about, from the very beginning of Batman, or at least as long as I know, the mob families have been the Falcones, the Falcones or the Falcones, and the Salvatore Maronis. Thank you.
Maroni, yeah.
Maronis, yeah. And Salvatore Maroni is played by Clancy Brown, who's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things is his wife is Iranian, or
I
Persian,
know.
or she speaks Farsi, and she's played by an incredible actress. And there's just this one throwaway moment where she taught him how to cook, and he cooks an Iranian meal for Sofia, and then says a very quick blessing.
Yep.
That I heard the word. I know a tiny bit of Arabic, including the word shukran, which means thank you, which I think is what he said. So, and the show doesn't make a big deal of it. Like, did he convert to Islam? Did he just say the prayer because that's what his wife did?
Right.
Like,
and you don't need to.
We don't. But it's just such a beautiful detail about the richness of this world.
Shora Agdashlu, and if I pronounced it incorrectly, I apologize, but from House of Sand and Fog, with her voice like this.
Yeah.
And
so
she
good.
is, I mean, she's the type of person you cannot look away. She's so stunning, and her presence is so imposing, and she's fantastic in this.
So the other detail I was going to say, and this, I think in some ways I'm glad you only saw this and not the movie, although the movie is phenomenal. But my only real complaint is that, and this is a complaint I have more and more as we're building these bigger universes, is there seems to be this thing of if you make a TV show based on a movie world, you can't actually say the things from the movie. Like the word Batman is never mentioned.
Right.
We see the bat signal at the very end.
Right.
And that didn't make any sense to me because so much of what has just happened is about the Batman and is about the Batman establishing by the end of the movie, like he is a beacon of hope. And that, so on the one hand, it feels like, well, did everything Batman do not matter because no one feels that hope? Or does, like, why isn't he getting involved as these criminal underworlds are turning to war? Like, where is the Batman? And I get that for the purpose of the show, they want to keep him off the table. It just felt like it didn't actually make sense in the world that the movie had created. And it's just a little quibble of mine about these kind of like you don't have to do extended universes. This could have been a standalone show. But if you're going to put it in the universe with the Batman movie, then I just wish there'd been a little more connection there.
And that's one of the nice things about coming to it not knowing anything, is I didn't know that and didn't care. I
Totally.
Not once did I think, where's Batman in all of this?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that kind of. I think that kind of underlines what I'm saying is it should make it just a standalone thing, you know?
Right.
But
God bless my ignorance.
Love it, love it.
All right, I'm going to tell everybody about my stuff, and then I want you to remind everybody where they can find you.
Sounds good.
Make Me a Nerd is a production of True Story FM, engineering by the peerless Pete Wright. Our theme song is Wonderstruck by Jane and the Boy. You can get me on Instagram at Mandy_Kaplan_Clavens, both with K's. If you're listening to this on Apple, please leave a review. Write a review, share your thoughts about the penguin or anything else we're talking about. Hit that 5 stars. It helps get more eyes on the podcast. And if you're feeling really into it, go to makemeanerd.com and hit the join button to get your episodes ad-free and early and some bonus content. Sometimes I keep my guests and do an extra interview and only members are hearing those. So thank you for listening. Thank you for all your support. I am going wildly out of order, but after Matthew tells the world where they can find them, I will come back and tell you what I think I'm doing next week. Matthew, hit it.
Okay, so I am known as the Ethical Panda. If you go to theethicalpanda.com, you'll find both of my podcasts, and that page is a subpage of the True Story FM family of podcasts. If you like superhero stories, especially like the ethical questions they raise, questions like, when is it okay to become a vigilante? A story that is a little bit relevant in our own world for Super Mario reasons in the last 2 months or so. Questions about Team Tony or Team Cap, all those kind of things. Go check us out on superhero ethics. And we've expanded the world of superheroes quite a bit. We talk about science fiction, we talk about fantasy, we talk about Cobra Kai, because the ability to have that much high school drama and still not communicate well, I think is a superpower. We talk about all sorts of great things there. And if you love Star Wars, and you're kind of sick, though, of so much Star Wars discourse being very confrontational, and especially it being very generationally confrontational, we're the prequel era, we're the best, or we're the original movies era, we're the best. Check out my other podcast, Star Wars Generations. It's me, a millennial and a Gen Zer, just talking about why we love the things we love, and talking about being critical of the things we don't like, but from a perspective of hey, this could be better, not the kind of garbage you see so much online. We're right now doing episode-by-episode coverage of Skeleton Crew, the amazing TV show that I think is also very standalone, and not to keep inviting myself onto this podcast, but another great thing for Mandy I think you would really like. But yeah, so that, and of course you can find me on most of the socials at The Ethical Panda. I've been debating how much I want to move to Blue Sky. I haven't really moved there yet, but I probably will be soon. As we record, quite literally, the Supreme Court is deciding whether or not I'm going to keep being active on TikTok or whether that's going to go away. But I've sort of been in a limbo where I haven't been creating TikToks until that's decided. If hopefully we get to keep TikTok, I will keep making TikToks there and you can see more of that. But mostly just check out all the great things, True Story, and that's where you'll find me.
Thank you. And thank you for always wanting to dive deep, but yet keep it light. It's just such a joy to talk to you about these things and
thank you.
Hear your perspective and have you educate me. And it's nerducate me, trademark. Next week, I will be doing Blade Runner.
Ooh.
What has become of me? I watched Blade Runner. That's all I'll say. So everybody go watch Blade Runner and join me next week. And thank you and goodbye.
To Mandy's dream of electric sheep.